I still remember exactly how his words fell into the room, like shards of glass on marble. Sharp, loud, echoing. It was the night before our 10-year high school reunion. I was standing in the kitchen of my tiny Chicago apartment, a cup of tea trembling in my hand. My phone was on speaker, and his voice, Daniel Evans, filled the space like he owned it. "You're not good enough, Alyssa," he said. Flat. Cold. "Honestly, you never were." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stared ahead at the little post-it note on my fridge that said, "You are becoming someone you used to dream about." It was a lie, wasn't it? Daniel kept talking like he hadn't just detonated something inside me. "I mean, you work at a nonprofit, right? That's cute. But I'm just being real with you. People at the reunion, they remember the hierarchy. You weren't exactly top tier." I blinked slowly. He went on, his voice annoyingly casual, like he was giving me fashion advice. "Look, it's not personal. I'm just saying maybe don't come trying to prove something. People talk. Just be humble about it." "Be humble about what?" "Surviving?" He ended with a chuckle. "Don't make it awkward for yourself. You know how people are." Click. He hung up before I could respond. Not that I would've. I didn't trust my voice. Not while I was holding back the sob tightening in my throat like a fist. I leaned against the counter, the steam from my tea swirling like ghosts around my face. I hadn't seen Daniel since graduation, but apparently, his arrogance hadn't aged a day. I was 28. I paid my rent on time. I volunteered every weekend. I had 2 degrees. I paid off my car. And yet one sentence from the boy who used to cheat off my calculus tests made me feel 16 again. Invisible. Not enough. Too quiet. Too plain. Too me. I didn't go to bed that night. I sat on the floor of my bathroom, scrolling through photos on my phone. Every tiny victory I had quietly celebrated, getting published in a magazine, giving a TEDx talk, helping a refugee family find housing, felt suddenly small. I kept hearing his voice. "You're not good enough." And the worst part? A part of me believed him. We hadn't even been close friends in high school. I was in the yearbook club. He was prom king. I was the girl with messy buns and oversized hoodies. He was the one with girls hanging off his arm and college scouts lined up at his locker. Still, there was a night. Senior year. After a football game. It was raining. I was waiting for my mom, holding a soaked poster board for a fundraiser I'd organized. Daniel had walked past me, stopped and said, "You look like someone who tries too hard." That was it. That one line. And I remembered it for 10 years. So when he messaged me on Facebook 2 months ago, "Hey, heard you're in Chicago too. Want to catch up before the reunion?" I said yes. Why? I don't know. Maybe I thought he'd changed. Maybe I thought I had. We met once for coffee. Just once. He talked the entire time. About his real estate business, his penthouse view, his upcoming trip to Dubai. He asked nothing about me. Not even once. At the end of it, he said, "We should go to the reunion together." Show him we made it. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. He wasn't joking. And when I hesitated, when I said, "Maybe I'll just go solo," that's when he called me later and said it. "You're not good enough." That phrase settled inside me like poison. It wasn't just about Daniel. It was about every time I wasn't chosen. Every job I didn't get. Every friend who forgot my birthday. Every man who dated me casually while waiting for someone more exciting. I didn't cry that night. But the next morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Not because I was broken, but because something inside me had snapped. Not in anger. In clarity. I opened my laptop and typed one word into Google. Stylist. Then I texted Tasha, my old roommate from grad school. "Me. You know that stylist friend you mentioned? I need her." "Tasha. For the reunion, oh, it's on." By 4 p.m. that afternoon, I was sitting in a bright little studio while a woman named Kaylee, with silver hair and Prada heels, studied me like I was a blank canvas. "What's the goal?" she asked. I paused. Then I said, "To walk into that room and make him wish he'd never opened his mouth." Kaylee smiled. "I got you." The next 2 weeks were a blur. Haircuts. dress fittings, a skincare routine that made my face glow like glass. Kaylee didn't just transform how I looked, she taught me how to see myself. "You've got presence," she said once while adjusting a blazer on me. "You just forgot how to take up space." The night of the reunion arrived. I stood outside the venue, a renovated historic hall in our small Indiana hometown, watching couples pull up, loud laughter echoing into the night. I could feel the panic bubbling in my chest. What if they all looked at me the same way? What if Daniel was right? But then I remembered something Kaylee said during our last session. "You don't need to prove you're enough. You already were. Just let them see it." I stepped out of the car, and the air shifted. I wore a fitted emerald green dress with a square neckline and long sleeves. My hair fell in soft waves, and I walked like I wasn't scared. Inside, music played. Balloons hung from the ceiling. Former classmates gathered in clusters, drinks in hand, sharing "remember when" stories. I heard someone gasp, "Is that Alyssa Carter?" People turned. One guy from the football team, I think his name was Chris, blinked. "Whoa. Alyssa?" A girl I barely knew touched my arm. "You look amazing." I smiled. "Thank you." I scanned the room, and there he was, Daniel Evans, standing near the bar, drink in hand, laughing with a few other ex-jocks. He turned, saw me, and froze. Dead silence. He blinked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I didn't go to him. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked to the other side of the room, where an old classmate, Maria, now a journalist, was waving at me. We hugged. She whispered, "Girl, you won the glow-up lottery." I laughed. But it wasn't about looks. It was about standing in the same place I used to feel small in, and realizing the room hadn't changed. I had. You might think that Daniel was the first person who made me feel small. He wasn't. He was just the loudest echo of a pattern I knew far too well, one that started long before I ever entered high school. My earliest memory of being not enough wasn't in a classroom or a lunchroom. It was in my own home. I grew up in a modest house on a quiet street in Lafayette, Indiana. My parents were high school sweethearts who believed in Sunday dinners, lawn mowing schedules, and the American dream. They had 2 kids, me, the oldest, and my younger brother, Jason. Jason was the golden child. He had a smile that could melt butter, a laugh that drew people in, and a way of never facing consequences for anything. Teachers loved him. Neighbors adored him. Even when he messed up, forgot homework, dented the car, stayed out too late, it was always chalked up to boys being boys. But me? I was the careful one, the quiet one, the one who turned off lights, washed dishes without being asked, and stayed out of trouble because I knew no one would save me if I didn't. Birthdays always told the story. Jason's 10th birthday? Backyard party, bouncy castle, magician, and 20 screaming kids. My 12th? Store-bought cake, and a rushed dinner between my mom's work shift and Jason's soccer practice. I told myself I didn't mind. I even smiled in the pictures. But the older I got, the more I started noticing the quiet hurt building up like layers of dust. One memory still stings. I was 15, and I had just won an essay contest, first place in the entire state. I came home buzzing, holding the certificate in my hand like a ticket to being seen. Mom looked up from her phone. "That's nice, sweetie." Then she went back to texting. 3 hours later, Jason walked in with a participation ribbon from a swim meet. She clapped. She took pictures. She posted about it on Facebook. "Proud of my boy," the caption read. No mention of me. I started pouring myself into academics, hoping that maybe, just maybe, enough achievement would earn me a seat at the same emotional table. Straight A's, debate club captain, volunteering, awards, recommendations. Every win felt like another brick I stacked, trying to build a bridge to my parents' approval. But the bridge never reached them. And eventually, I stopped trying. In high school, I drifted into the background. I wasn't invisible, exactly, but I was the kind of girl people forgot after the conversation ended. I helped decorate the prom, but wasn't invited to the after-party. I edited the yearbook, but was cropped out of the group photo. I was always on the edge of things useful, reliable, but never essential. And then came Daniel. He wasn't cruel in the classic movie villain way. He didn't shove people into lockers or make fun of kids in front of the class. No, Daniel's power was quieter, more dangerous. He used charm as a weapon. He made people feel lucky just to be around him. He knew it, and he used it. There were moments, brief, blink-and-you'll-miss-it interactions, where I thought maybe he saw me. Like the time he complimented my photography project. Or when he asked me for notes before a test. Or when he said I was different. But every time I let myself believe he meant it, reality came crashing back. Like when I overheard him joking about that nerdy girl Alyssa to his friends. Or when he high-fived me in the hallway, then looked through me at lunch. I was good enough to use, but never good enough to choose. Still, I carried those crumbs for years. I clung to any recognition, any approval like it was a lifeline. Not just from Daniel. From everyone. Because growing up, I was taught that value had to be earned. And if you weren't being clapped for, praised, or posted about, you probably didn't matter. Even after high school, the dynamic followed me. I got into Northwestern on a scholarship, moved to Chicago, lived frugally, worked hard, took every internship, every opportunity. I climbed from receptionist to project manager at a nonprofit focused on housing reform. And still, I felt like I was whispering into the world, hoping someone would hear me. Jason? He barely graduated, floated between jobs, and still got more praise at Thanksgiving than I ever did. Jason's really finding himself, Mom would say while passing the mashed potatoes. When I mentioned a speaking engagement at a national conference, Dad just nodded. That's good, honey. You always like talking. It was no wonder that when Daniel messaged me out of the blue years later, acting like he was the one giving me a chance to be seen, I fell right into it. That deep, invisible script inside me said, "This is how it works. You get picked. You get permission to feel worthy." That's why his words hit so hard. Not just because they were cruel, but because they echoed everything I had silently feared was true about myself. That I had been trying my whole life to be chosen. I remember one night a few years back sitting on the train home after work. It was late. I was tired. I'd spent the whole day advocating for a family who had been evicted unlawfully. It was emotional. I cried in the bathroom at lunch. On that train ride, I looked around at the other passengers, asleep, scrolling, blank-faced, and I thought, if I disappeared right now, would anyone notice? And then, another thought even darker. If I stopped trying so hard, what would I even be? That night changed something in me. I didn't quit my job. I didn't move across the world. But I started writing again. Just little things. Personal essays. Poems. A short story that got picked up by an online journal. And slowly, word by word, I started rebuilding the voice I had buried under layers of not enough. By the time Daniel called me before the reunion, I should have been strong enough to let his words bounce off. But healing isn't linear. And some wounds don't bleed anymore. They just bruise, quietly, when touched. So no, Daniel wasn't the first person who made me feel small. But that night, standing in my kitchen, hearing his voice say it out loud, something broke. Daniel's words echoed long after the call ended. You're not good enough. Not I don't think this is a good idea. Not let's just go separately. Not even it's complicated. Just that. Cold. Final. Like a judge handing down a sentence. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like forever, phone still in hand, staring at the backsplash behind the sink. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. It was absurd how ordinary everything was while something inside me was collapsing. I didn't cry. Not yet. I couldn't. Instead, I went through the motions, washed a glass I wasn't using, refolded the dish towel, opened the fridge, and closed it again. It was muscle memory. Survival instinct. Keep moving so the pain doesn't catch up. But it did. Later, when I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, I felt it creep in, slow and suffocating. He thinks I'm still that girl from high school. And worse. Maybe I am. The reunion had been coming up for months. A 10-year milestone. Our graduating class was holding it at a mid-range banquet hall just outside Lafayette. Open bar. Buffet dinner. Dance floor. +1's optional. I hadn't planned to go. Not until Daniel messaged me. He'd seen one of my stories go semi-viral online, a personal essay about childhood invisibility and the hunger for praise. It got picked up by a women's platform and shared widely. He'd met me on Instagram. Didn't expect you to become a writer. That should have been the first red flag. But I ignored the tone. I focused on the fact that he reached out. He asked how life was.
Said he was impressed.
Said he was glad I found my voice. And then casually mentioned the reunion. Would be cool to catch up in person. We could go together if you want. I said yes too fast. The thing is, I wasn't in love with Daniel. Not anymore. I didn't even like the person he'd become. But there was still a part of me that wanted that full circle moment. The proof that I'd made it out. That I'd become someone worth looking at twice. It wasn't about romance. It was about reclaiming something. But then, 2 days before the reunion, he called. And said what he said. I just think it might be weird, he started. I could tell he was pacing. His voice had that strained politeness people use when they're trying to make rejection sound like logic. You know how people talk, he added. I'm seeing someone kind of. We're not official, but still. I didn't say anything. I just think, he continued, it might give people the wrong idea. Us showing up together. Like, optics-wise. I almost laughed at the word optics. Like this was a press conference. Then, he dropped the real line. You're not exactly in the same social lane anymore. I blinked. Excuse me? We just live in different worlds. That's all. Don't take it personally. I could hear the smirk in his voice when he said it. That old, familiar, self-satisfied tone. And that's when the words came. You're not good enough. Not implied. Not sugar-coated.
Said.
Out loud. I wish I'd screamed. Or laughed. Or said something sharp enough to slice the smugness off his voice. But I didn't. I just ended the call. And stood in my apartment like I was 17 again. Holding my breath, hoping someone would show up and tell me I mattered. The next day, my mom called. She was going to the reunion too. Some of the parents had organized a separate dinner in the lounge attached to the venue. She wanted to know if I'd be attending. I hesitated. Then said I wasn't sure. Her silence said everything. People will wonder, she said. Wonder what? Well, it's just, Daniel's going. With that new girl he's seeing. His mom posted about it. I didn't respond. And she added, her voice softening just enough to sting, he's always been a catch. There it was. He's always been a catch. The subtext? You're not. I think what hurt most wasn't Daniel's rejection. It was how easily everyone accepted it. How familiar it felt to be dismissed, overlooked, quietly erased. No one said, that was cruel. No one said, you deserved better. They just nodded, shrugged, moved on. Like I should have expected it. Like I should be used to it by now. That night, I pulled up the RSVP page again. I hovered over the cancel button. I could picture it all so clearly. The glances, the whispers, the tight smiles from old classmates who still saw me as that quiet girl. And Daniel, walking in with someone else, laughing like none of it mattered. I almost backed out. Almost. But then I saw the message. It was from a girl I barely remembered, Vanessa Green. We'd had chemistry together sophomore year. Sat at the same table. Exchanged notes once or twice. Her message was short. Read your article. Made me cry. Just wanted to say,
I saw you back then.
Wish I'd said something sooner. I stared at those words until they blurred. I saw you back then. Not you were impressive. Not you've changed. Just, I saw you. And something shifted. Maybe it was small. But it was enough. I didn't make a scene. Didn't call Daniel back. Didn't confront my mom. Didn't post a watch me now monologue on social media. I just unplugged. Quietly. Deliberately. The first thing I did was block Daniel's number. Not out of anger, but necessity. I didn't want to give myself the option of spiraling. Of rereading messages, analyzing tone, wondering if maybe, just maybe, I'd misunderstood.
No.
He'd made himself clear. And I was done giving people like him any more time, space, or benefit of the doubt. Next, I logged off Instagram. Not forever. Just long enough to stop obsessing over who would post pictures from the reunion. Long enough to resist the urge to watch stories that would only feed my pain. Long enough to remember that I had a life, a real life, outside filtered snapshots and recycled highlight reels. I deactivated for 30 days. I didn't announce it. Didn't warn anyone. I just left. And it felt good. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not happy, but light. I cleaned my apartment top to bottom that weekend. Reorganized every drawer. Deleted over 700 photos from my phone, most of which I had kept just in case someone ever doubted where I'd been, who I'd been with, or what I'd done.
Proof.
Receipts. Evidence.
Gone.
I wasn't going to live for defense anymore. I started making small changes. I canceled the automatic Venmo I'd been sending my brother every month. It wasn't a big amount, but he never said thank you. Never even acknowledged it. Just expected it like clockwork. And honestly, I was tired. Tired of being the invisible donor in everyone's life. I also stopped answering my mother's daily calls. Not because I hated her, I didn't. But because every conversation somehow turned into a list of my inadequacies. You know, if only you were more like. It's not too late to fix. Some silences are healthier than the loudest words. I went to work, but I stopped volunteering for extra shifts. Stopped saying yes to coworkers who forgot their responsibilities and relied on me to clean up the slack. I still did my job well, in fact, but I no longer bent over backward to prove I was easy to work with. I let my excellence speak, and my silence protect it. The strangest part? No one really noticed. Not right away. People like me, women who serve quietly, help constantly, smile politely. We become wallpaper. We're loved for our availability, not ourselves. And when we step back, the room looks the same. Until it doesn't. It took 2 weeks for the first ripple. My sister texted me. Mom's worried. You okay? I typed out a reply. Then deleted it. She didn't reach out to me. She reached out about me. That's different. Week 3, I saw a missed call from my brother. First in over a year. Then another. Then a text. Hey, just wondering if you stopped sending the money or if it was a mistake? I stared at the message for a full minute. Then replied. It's not a mistake. No explanation. No defense. Just that. He didn't respond. There was power in my stillness. Not revenge. Not spite. Just clarity. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting myself. And in doing so, I began to see how much of my life I'd lived for other people's comfort. Not their love. Their comfort. When the reunion night finally arrived, I didn't cry. I didn't sit home with wine and regrets. I didn't text Vanessa or check Facebook or stalk Daniel's stories. Instead, I cooked myself dinner. Played my favorite soul playlist. Lit a candle, the expensive one I'd been saving for guests. Then I sat on my balcony, under the soft glow of string lights, and listened to the quiet. Not the absence of sound, the presence of peace. And that's when I realized. My silence wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. It started with a tag. A soft ding from my notifications pulled me back onto Instagram after nearly a month offline. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the icon. Was I ready? Was I strong enough? Then curiosity got the better of me. I tapped. The tag was in a post from someone I didn't immediately recognize, Aaron Millerites. A soft-toned picture, a table centerpiece from the reunion, a blurry champagne glass in the background, and a caption that made my breath catch. To the quiet girl who once sat beside me in sophomore lit and told me to just write it anyway when I was too afraid to submit my first short story, I don't think you even remember saying it. But I do. I never forgot it. That courage stuck with me. Tonight I saw your article on kindness go viral, and I realized you'd become the woman I always knew you could be. At Rachel Summers, thank you for being light in a dark place before either of us knew how rare that was. I stared at the screen. The username clicked. Erin Miller. She had braces back then. kept her stories in a purple notebook she never let anyone read. And I remembered what I'd told her in class, almost offhandedly, while packing up my bag. Just write it anyway. Don't wait for permission. She remembered. Not only that, she credited me.
Publicly. Kindly.
Sincerely. I hadn't known I'd impacted her. I hadn't known anyone had seen me in that way. But this post? It was the first crack in the wall I'd let the world build around me. And through that crack, something warm came pouring in. Later that day, my cousin Leah called. She wasn't close with our family, but we stayed in touch occasionally, just enough to know we existed in each other's worlds. "I saw Erin's post," she said before I could even say hello. I laughed nervously. "You did?" She read it out loud at the table. "What?" "At the reunion."
Toward the end.
A couple of the teachers were there. Mrs. Gallagher teared up. "I'm not kidding." My throat tightened. "Why?" "Because people started talking. About you. About how you were always kind. Always smart. Always invisible, but somehow unforgettable." I didn't speak. "And Daniel," she added. "He tried to joke about you not showing up. But nobody laughed." I closed my eyes. Leah continued. "Actually, Erin called him out. In front of everyone. Said, 'Funny how someone who thinks he's above people can't even say thank you to the ones who helped him graduate.'" I exhaled hard. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath. "She said that?" I asked. "Yup." And when she did, a few people nodded. It wasn't dramatic, but it shifted the air. You could feel it. That night, I got a follow request from Mrs. Gallagher herself, my 10th grade English teacher. She sent a message too. "Rachel, your voice is strong and necessary. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." More followed. Old classmates. Acquaintances. A girl I once helped find her locker the first week of school. One by one, quiet acknowledgments appeared. Not loud fanfare. Just subtle recognitions. Moments where I wasn't just the girl who didn't show up. I was someone who mattered, who had always mattered, even if no one had said it out loud before. I scrolled back to Erin's post and reread her caption. Something in me softened. You never know when the light you carry finally reaches someone. And in that moment I understood. All those years of being overlooked didn't mean I had no impact. It just meant my impact wasn't loud. It was quiet, gentle, persistent, like water over stone, like light breaking through. It started with a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. "Hi honey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. I know life gets busy, but we miss you. Let's catch up soon. Love you." I didn't return the call, because I knew that tone. I knew it wasn't love speaking, it was damage control. 3 days later, I got a group text from my sister. "Hey everyone, let's plan a casual family dinner. Maybe next week? Rachel, you in?" No one had reached out in months. No invitations. No check-ins. No support when I disappeared from the reunion, or when Daniel's words cut me to pieces.
But now?
Suddenly I mattered? Because my name was being whispered in other circles? Because people outside the family were finally seeing me? I didn't reply. An hour later, my brother texted me privately. "Sis, what's going on? Everyone's acting like you're a celebrity or something." No greeting. No warmth. Just confusion and mild irritation. I answered with a single sentence. "Nothing's going on. I've just stopped hiding. No more. No less." Then came the call from Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. But the next morning, I saw he'd tagged me in a photo from the reunion, a group shot from high school. I wasn't even in it. The caption said, "So many memories. Some people should have been here. You were missed at Rachel Summers." I stared at it for a long time. The comments were full of polite nostalgia. Some tagged others. Some wrote, or left hearts. One girl, who I barely knew, commented, "Isn't this the same Rachel you said wasn't good enough?" Weird flip. I didn't like the post.
Didn't respond. Didn't share it.
Just kept scrolling. A few days later, my mom tried again. This time in a longer voicemail. Rachel, I think there's been a lot of misunderstandings lately. I never meant to make you feel less than. You know I've always been hard on you because I believed in you, right? No apology. Just justification. We're proud of you, we really are. I just wish you wouldn't be so distant. People are starting to notice. There it is. Not, we miss you. Not, you deserve better. But people are noticing. Translation, this is making us look bad. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, and realized something. All their sudden concern wasn't about me. It was about them. Their comfort. Their image. Their story. They'd spent years writing me off as the one who wasn't enough, and now that I'd flipped the narrative, they were scrambling to reclaim it. Then came the real test. An email from my sister titled, "Can we fix this?" It read, "Hey, I've been thinking. Maybe we should talk, just us. I feel like there's been so much distance lately, and maybe we both contributed to that. I know you've been going through a lot, and maybe we didn't show up the way we should have. I'm sorry if that hurt you. But I also think you've been pulling away more than necessary. Let's reset? Life's too short." There it was again. The word reset. The request to erase without acknowledgement. To start over without looking back. To pretend the cutting words, the missed milestones, the deafening silence hadn't happened. I closed the email without replying. I didn't need closure from people who never offered respect in the first place. And yet they kept coming. A text from an aunt. "Your mom is really trying, Rachel." A Facebook comment from a cousin. "Family's all we have in the end." Even a random message from someone I hadn't seen since high school. "Just curious, did something happen with you and Daniel? He seems kind of off lately." I didn't answer any of them, because I finally understood. When people benefit from your silence, they call your truth drama. When your absence starts costing them, they call it distance. And when you finally find your voice, they try to reframe it as you being the problem. I wasn't falling for that anymore. I didn't owe them a seat at my table just because they noticed the food was finally good. The message came on a rainy Thursday. I had just finished washing my dinner dishes when I saw the little red notification. It was from Erin. Again. But this time it was longer. She had sent me a voice memo. I hesitated for a second, then pressed play. Her voice cracked halfway through. "I've been meaning to say this for a long time, Rachel. I don't think I even realized how much it meant to me until this past year. Until I finally published my book." I blinked. She published? It's called The Unseen Girls. And yeah, it's about people like us. The ones who sit on the edge of the room. Who speak gently. Who get forgotten. I swallowed hard, heart rising. "I based the main character on you. Not literally, but spiritually, I guess. Your kindness back then, it was like this small light I carried with me through some really dark years. And I never told you, but I should have." My hand covered my mouth. She continued. "I saw what people said about you back then. I saw how they dismissed you, laughed at you, ignored you. I didn't have the courage to speak up then, but I do now." The audio paused for a second, and I heard her inhale. "You didn't just save me. You reminded me that being quiet didn't mean being weak. That kindness mattered, even if no one clapped for it at the time." Tears slipped silently down my cheek. "I'm sorry it took so long to say it. But thank you. You mattered. You matter. And you always will." I replayed the message 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to let it soak in. That weekend, I received a package. A hardcover copy of The Unseen Girls, with a handwritten note tucked inside. "To Rachel, the girl who saw me when I was invisible. This book is yours as much as it is mine."
Erin.
I cried again. And this time, I didn't feel foolish for it. Because for once, the tears weren't from pain or rejection. They were from recognition. From being seen. Really, deeply seen. More messages trickled in over the next few days. A former classmate shared how I'd once helped her with a science project when no one else would. Another girl I barely remembered said I'd sat beside her at lunch when she had no friends and didn't know where to go. "I never forgot that," she wrote. "Even when no one talked to you either, you still showed up for someone else." that taught me what real kindness looked like. One by one, the stories came, each one a soft pebble, dropped into the still water of memory. Each one reminding me that the ripples I'd created weren't lost. They had simply taken time to reach the shore. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible anymore. Not because I shouted louder, not because I won some battle, but because someone finally said, "I saw you. You made a difference. Thank you." I walked into a bookstore a few weeks later and saw Aaron's book on a featured table. My heart flipped. I bought another copy. This one I planned to keep pristine, to remind myself that kindness, real kindness, always comes full circle, even if it takes years, even if it seems forgotten, even if no one notices at first. Because the truth is, when you lead with light, it always finds its way back to you. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The sky was pale and calm, the kind of sky that doesn't make a big statement but still holds your attention. I had just made coffee when the knock came. 3 soft raps. Not urgent, not hostile, just cautious. I peeked through the peephole and froze. It was my mother, standing on the porch with a Tupperware container in her hands. The last time she came unannounced, I was in college, and it was because she forgot her phone charger in my car. This wasn't a charger run. This was something else. I opened the door. Not wide, just enough to look her in the eyes. She smiled nervously. "Hi, honey." I didn't say anything. She lifted the container slightly. "I made your favorite, chicken pot pie." That used to mean something. Back when I still believed that food could fix silence, that a warm plate could undo cold years. She waited a beat, then sighed. "I know I haven't said everything I should have. And I know you're hurting. We all are. We all are." The deflection in that phrase used to crush me. Now it just made me tired. "Can we come in?" she asked gently. "We," I echoed. She turned, revealing my sister, Emily, behind her, standing stiff and uncomfortable in a gray coat. Emily didn't wave, didn't smile. She just nodded, like this was some kind of business meeting, like I was a vendor they were negotiating with. My mom tried again. "We just want to talk. Maybe clear the air." "The air isn't unclear," I said calmly. "It's just finally honest." She blinked. "Rachel, don't you miss us? Don't you miss family?" That word again. Family. Used as a blanket. As a band-aid over years of passive cruelty. Over years of not being chosen. Over moments when I begged silently for their support and got excuses instead. I looked at her. Really looked. At the lines around her eyes. At the weariness in her face. At the person I used to want so badly to please. And I realized something that felt both sad and freeing. I didn't need this anymore. I stepped back slightly and softly said,
"No."
No anger. No monologue. No justification.
Just peace.
Her face fell. Emily looked away. My mom swallowed. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She stood there for a few seconds longer, as if waiting for something to change. For me to flinch. To reconsider. To people-please my way back into silence. But I didn't. And I wouldn't. Not anymore. She placed the container on the porch rail. "Well, if you change your mind." I didn't respond. Just closed the door gently. Not with force. With finality. I stood on the other side, heart steady. No racing pulse. No tears. Just an overwhelming sense of calm. Later that night, I threw the chicken pot pie away. Not because it wasn't good, but because I didn't need to digest memories disguised as meals anymore. Some goodbyes don't come with slamming doors or shouted fights. Sometimes, the most powerful ending is a quiet, steady no. One that echoes louder than any scream. There's something strange that happens when you stop begging for belonging. The silence you feared, it becomes peace. The loneliness you braced for, it turns into freedom. And the version of yourself you used to water down, she begins to bloom. For most of my life, I thought love had to be earned. That if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, someone would finally see me. But here's what no one told me. Being good won't save you from being overlooked by people committed to misunderstanding you. Being kind won't always protect you from being rejected. And sometimes, being silent doesn't make you wise. It just makes you invisible. But also, choosing yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't rude. And saying no, even to your own family, isn't heartless. It's holy. I wish I could go back and hug the girl I used to be. The girl who stayed quiet when they laughed. Who smiled through being ignored. Who brought gifts to people who never remembered her birthday. I'd tell her, you don't have to earn love like it's a prize. You are love. And one day, they'll wish they had treated you like it. To anyone watching this who feels like the outsider in your own story, who's been told you're too sensitive, too quiet, too much, let me say this clearly. You are not too much. You are just too real for people who pretend. The people who tried to shrink you were never your people. The ones who mocked your silence were never listening anyway. The ones who couldn't clap when you won were never in your corner. You're not alone. You're not broken. And you're not invisible. Not anymore. Because somewhere, someone saw you, even if they didn't say it right away. Someone remembered that small kindness you offered. That patience you gave. That smile you held when you had nothing to smile about. You matter. And your light? It's not too dim. It's just too sacred for shallow places.
Keep your light.
Even if they don't applaud it. Even if they don't come back. Because one day, they'll realize you were the one worth showing up for all along.